Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStoryTV and the HerStory podcast. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia today. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest coming to us all the way from the United States. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Sure. My name is Charlie McCoy Oyekwe. I am born and raised here in the United States by way of Oklahoma City. I've lived in New York for the past 15 years. So my story really is a story of resilience. How did I get to New York, you may ask? Well, I was born in a single parent household from a Nigerian father who immigrated here to give me a better life. My father passed away when I was a teenager. So that was a traumatic thing early on in my life that kind of gave me impetus to want to, do something important. My neighborhood growing up in Oklahoma City was a wild one, and my mother struggled to try to keep me away from gang activity, drugs, violence, so forth, over policing. So her antidote was the Jehovah's Witness Church. So when I was about 5 years old, she became a baptized Jehovah's Witness, and so my childhood was spent vacillating between the streets and the church and trying to figure out really kind of what to make of this life. It was really a story of survival. That's the first half of my life. I was able to kind of get my things together after high school. I became a master barber. My craft as an artist is what has been able to propel me throughout the years. And the first thing it did was enabled me to qualify to move to New York. See, the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a headquarters right here in Brooklyn. They had been there for most of the century. It's a $1 billion nonprofit responsible for delivering Bible literature worldwide. They have about 8 million members. And I was selected to work at the headquarters. It's a volunteer arrangement. So they really care for your housing, your medical, your all your incidental needs in exchange for your work, your labor, and so forth. But it's also a Bible college. So when you're there, you actually have to read the Bible from cover to cover for the first year while you're there, and it's like a college. So I was educated there in the business, in the religion, and so I did that for about 6 years, full time. Then I left and I got married to another Jehovah's Witness. At this particular time, I was still using my craft as a barber to create opportunities for myself. Remember, I'm from Oklahoma City. I didn't have a father, but my uncles were around. My uncles were really cool guys. One of them was a master barber, and another was a master mechanic. So I've always been good with my hands, and I've always had men around to kind of teach me a trade. So I was able to use that throughout my life. And when I came to Watchtower, it was no different. So I was there, and I became an elder. An elder in the congregation is like what the Bible calls an older man. And so you really have to put yourself in a position to succeed in order to be appointed. And I was appointed at 26, which is also very quick for a young man of color in this organization. So I have a lot of history there. When I decided to leave and pursue a different life, I began to have these kind of awakenings of consciousness outside of being at the Bethel headquarters. I was traveling a lot with my spouse, and I got a job eventually at L'Oreal, working for one of their brands and producing barbershops. Kiehl's 1851 was the brand that decided to open up a barbershop in Manhattan. And I came on board for their first launch, and I also helped them open up a second location. And I was with them for about 5 years. Throughout that 5 years, again, I traveled a lot. I was able to network a lot with people in the city, and my community began to slightly become enhanced with people I wasn't familiar with, older, more successful men of color who I never had access to my entire life, and I just kind of began to understand bigger possibilities in what I had previously known throughout my life. So traveling throughout Africa and Asia, Europe, I also saw things at museums that gave me what's called a cognitive dissonance with what I had been learning. And so I decided to leave the organization. And I quickly found out that what makes a cult is how they treat you when you decide to leave. I was, when I went to my mother and my spouse and my friends and told them that I thought that this particular group was harmful because of some of the things I had learned over the years. And with the awakening of consciousness, I wanted to make a life change. I was quickly rebuffed by then everyone that I loved. So I knew that if I was going to make this choice, it was going to cost me everything I had. But for me, the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of individuality and the mental component involved in that was more important. You see, I had been suffering from depression for maybe 3 or 4 years after leaving the headquarters and working throughout that time because my body, my situation just wasn't working for my soul is what I can ascertain after years of therapy and working with different practitioners. So I escaped. Essentially, I ran away from this entire life, this organization, the people within it, and I started brand new here in New York City after being in that organization for 12 years. And it cost me again, it cost me dearly. There, like I mentioned, there are 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses. About 20% are inactive, excommunicated, or disfellowshipped. That's roughly 1.1 to 1.6 million people. Typically, in that group, you'll find folks suffering from PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. And about 1 in 6 of that group have experienced abuse within the organization. When I left, I started to understand all of this and the gravity of what had transpired throughout my life, and realizing that the lack of tools and resources kind of made me beholden to that group. And during my exodus, I've tried to avail myself of every resource and every tool that was previously unavailable to me. So I've spent time, again, traveling the world, dealing with psychics and astrologers, and tarot card readers, having long Akashic record therapy sessions, reading hours and on hours of esoteric texts about history and the Bible and religion, just so I can have answers to reconcile myself. But all the while building 4 or 5 businesses in Manhattan because the pain of losing so much put a chip on my shoulder that I haven't been able to turn off. Even to this day, I haven't spoken to my mother since I left, and she hasn't even met my daughter, who I had about 2 years after leaving the cult. That drive just to be successful. For me, success is the antidote to suffering, right? Picking up my torture stake every day and building something bigger than me. So I'm still a spiritual person, but I'm not religious. I'm a person who has a direct connection to what I call the all being. That's for me. And I try to have a daily practice of meditation and quiet time. And I try to take care of myself at the gym. I try to make sure that, there's not much you can control in this world, but you can control your physical self, your mentality, your spirituality. And then that can trickle in and around the spaces and the people you come in contact with. So I've been over the past few years trying to rebuild my entire worldview, my religious worldview. And the proof is in the pudding, because here recently I've been tagged by a major company, Harry's, the skincare brand, to be their spokesperson on mental health. And so I invited a lot of my clients to come down just to do get haircuts during that video shoot. I did not tell them to say anything, but they all volunteered to speak on my behalf. And the things that I heard them say about me really, really touched me. And again, I didn't coach them. And what that did for me is let me know that, a light cannot be hid when situated upon a mountaintop. If you just do what's right every day, consistently, no matter who thinks what of you, if you know that you're doing what's good for the community, what's good for the country, what's good for the planet, what's good for the world, what's good for the universe, then it will show itself in time. And so that's what I found. I've rebuilt a brand new community, and this community is more full of rich and vibrant people than the one that I had previously. And so now I've dedicated myself to the work of going back and giving people with my similar background access to the tools and the resources that they need to regain control of their life and their mental health even quicker. And I'll give you an example. So when I first left the Jehovah's Witnesses, again, I had to start from scratch, building my network piece by piece, traveling, saying yes to invitations. After 6 years, I had a barbershop on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, a clothing store on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, a men's grooming brand that I purchased from a European gentleman in London that had access to 15 countries, wholesale barbershops worldwide. So that's 3 successful businesses. I had an Airbnb company for several years. I also had an agency, my creative agency, that does all of these partnerships and collaborations. And the last thing, the most important piece, was the Grooming Alchemist by Artisan Barber, a foundation with the sole purpose of helping cult survivors and underserved youth, primarily men of color, get access to other people who are successful, mentors, resources, therapy, so that they can see their full potential. So all of this has given me a rich purpose in life. And the depression, the anxiety that I used to have has diminished greatly, because my purpose is bigger than those things. Now, I'm 38 years old, and it's tough to condense all of that into just 5 minutes, but I try to give you brief, glimpses of my journey. It's packed with so many like case studies and life lessons. I've been betrayed, I don't know how many times, by how many friends. I've had so many bad decisions when it comes to dealing with finances and business. I've learned the hard way how to build from scratch wealth as an African American. I've studied macroeconomics. When I was in a Jehovah's Witness, they make you sign what's called a vow of poverty, which means that the IRS won't bother you because you can't make any money until you come from under that vow of poverty. I also have found out that I have Jupiter in the second house of my birth chart. That means that resources come to me because of some way that the universe is situated on my behalf. So to tell a young man who has Jupiter in his second house he can't make money for 15 years and to not educate him, you would think that I would be bitter and upset, but all it did was make me more hungry than ever before. And as you can see behind me, I've been able to get myself educated again, and I've been able to find resources where I can understand the markets, build wealth, have ownership. That includes assets like crypto, assets like stocks, options, real estate. I've been able to build and grow these things. And it's very important because the age that you have to earn these things really is at its peak from like 25 to about a 41, 43, 44. So if the witnesses have you during your prime of life and you think the world is going to end, why would you invest in the future? Why would you invest in your mental health or the wealth of your family? Why would you get property or invest in the markets? People who do that believe that the future will be more promising than it is now. That's why you put your resources into it. So there are millions of people, again, who are coming out of this cult who don't even understand the world enough to build and help us continue it and save and invest for the future. So that's what my foundation is more important than ever. When Jehovah's Witnesses come out, they'll be able to get the education, the therapy, access to financial markets that they need, because I've been in their shoes. And it's not just them. New York City itself, a third of the population is under 18. That's like 1.8 million kids. And at least half of those are Black and Latino, and what we call underserved. Now think about it. I'm no stranger to wealth. I spent 6 years on the Upper East Side, 6 years in Brooklyn Heights, 6 years in Wallkill. My first 18 years were spent in a wild neighborhood where I had to survive for my life. Since the age of 6 or 7, I've heard shootouts. I've dealt with gang violence. I've dealt with death and tragedy. You know, people in the military go to Afghanistan for 3 years, grown men, and they come back with PTSD that they can't get rid of for the rest of their life. Now, kids like me grew up in areas like Chicago, Oklahoma City, the South Bronx, which is where we serve in District 9. Their entire life exposed to those conditions. Where's their therapy? Where's their help? So my work is even more important than ever. Yeah, I'm a master barber. We have the barbershop. I'm interested in men's health in general. Men should take care of themselves. They should get their nails done. They should get massages. They should go to the sauna regularly. They should meditate every day. Men should pick up their torture stake and continue to build themselves and build society. But they must also care for their mental tranquility. That's a given. Men are, I think, 2 or 3 times more likely to suffer from mental health and not say anything about it than other groups. And when it comes to specifically men of color, those statistics get even more stark, right? I've been able to break the mold because of sheer determination. But I can't just ride off to the into the sunset and turn my back on those who are coming up behind me. That's not how I'm built. I'm going to be all right in this world, but I'm also going to make sure that thousands of other people, individuals, with similar experiences and similar backgrounds as me, same opportunity.
Charlie, what an amazing story. What I love about your story is that you came out stronger. You alchemized the bad experience and you turned it into gold. Literally, you are an alchemist. Now, when you look back at yourself, when you were in the cult, when you were in the religion, let's take you back to those younger days. If you could give advice to some other young person who's listening to this interview right now, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give them?
You know, Gertrude, that's a great question. And it's funny you say that, because in order to, again, heal myself of some of the trauma, I've been able to essentially go back and deal with my younger self by like journaling and writing my younger self, going into my meditations, showing up in various instances. So to answer the question, if I had to tell my younger self 3 things, I would say number 1, trust your instinct. A lot of times I knew in various situations that something wasn't right or that I was going a different direction, but I stayed the course even though it was against my better judgment. And there's a little part of you that's kind of always been that you may not have fully integrated with. That's kind of helping you out. Some people call it the conscious, some people call it the secret self, some people call it the soul. You can call it whatever you want. But that instinct, that intuition is important. Trust it. If something doesn't feel right, think. And then that leads me to my second bit of advice. Learn to think critically, right? No matter who tells you something, learn to think and analyze things to their conclusion. Learn to analyze things from different angles. Learn to really put things on paper and measure them out, right? And really calculate for yourself. I know it's difficult to tell a young person that, but young people are astounding. And if you give them things to think about and criteria to reach that's healthy, they will do it. So again, number one, trust your instinct. Number two, think critically. And then the last piece of advice I would say is watch your association. I know it's, First Corinthians 15:33 is an old scripture. No matter who or what religion or form of Christianity you practice, bad association spoils useful habits, right? That's just a good piece of advice, an ancient piece of advice, period, no matter who you are. Good associates will take you to newer heights, and associates that are not good for you will put you in situations that will jeopardize your success. It's as simple as that.
You really are the sum total of the company you keep.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that. Now, you and I kind of share a kind of a similar life experience. I was brought up in the Catholic Church. Fortunately, I had religion beaten out of me when I was 6. So I went to a Catholic school, all white school in Rhodesia before Zimbabwe had independence.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just started school. We were playing in a garden, and one of the nuns came into this garden. My friend saw her coming. I didn't. So my sister and I were the only 2 Black kids in the school. The next thing I remember, she had grabbed hold of me. She beat me until I fainted.
Mm.
And I woke up in sick bay 10, 15 minutes later.
Ouch.
I remember going home and telling my mom what had happened. I got a beating for that as well because I was being naughty. The nuns never told my mother that I had passed out. But I came out of that experience knowing that that woman was not a good person.
Mm.
And I committed to being a good person was
Mm-hmm.
more important than being religious.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the definition of religion and spirituality for you?
And I take it you're asking me that question because the definition for you was being good, right, and not being religious, and you saw that clearly. I think we're of similar mindset. For me, spirituality, and I remember I used to be what's called a convention speaker. So I would go and give talks on Sundays. I would give talks to large audiences. I would give talks to small audiences. Some as large as 1,500, some as small as 200. But we would give these outlines. We would give these outlines on spirituality, and the definition of my former group was, going out into the preaching activity. So an act of service, or studying the Bible with someone, or a missionary act. So that's what spirituality was from a religious context. But for me, spirituality is about like true connection to the universe and all the universal beings. And just, I don't want to get too like pie in the sky. Let me just bring it down. So one of the things that I know about truth is that it's not sectarian. If it's true, it applies to every man, every woman, every child, period. For example, gravity is true. You try to disregard it, we all pay the consequences. Things like not celebrating holidays, things like, not getting blood transfusions, things like not voting. Well, those are rules that has nothing to do with truth. So for spirituality for me is living in that truth, right? And then treating people, my neighbor, the planet, right? My loved ones, everyone with the same kind of reverence that I treat myself in that truth, right? I'm not trying to hurt myself. I'm trying to self-actualize. So it's, that's that spiritual journey is everyone's to figure out, right? Every person. But what I know for sure that connects it is that, once you really understand what it means to be a spiritual person, then, how you treat people will show, period. Spirituality is that,
Yeah. Now, you were given a interesting environment to develop and craft who you are. For most people of African descent, our hair is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, growing up in Africa, the times that I would spend with my cousins, my mom, doing my hair for hours was a very, very spiritual experience. And when I first came to New York, I have two sons.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing they wanted to do was go to a barbershop in New York.
Nice.
Now, in those spaces, yes, they had watched a lot of, movies, and they were always curious to experience it real. But what happens in these spaces, it's the stories that are shared.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who do hair are therapists. They are good listeners. They hold space for people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
So your barbershop is more than just a barbershop. There's so many layers to the space and the environment that you create for your customers. Am I correct?
You will be correct. Yes.
And a lot of men find it very, very difficult to talk about their stuff. And I think that is one of the safest places you can actually go. And that people will listen with no judgment. You're just there to hold space. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
I'll tell you just a little bit about my personal experience in this industry as a barber. So they say, after you do 10,000 hours of something, you're an expert. I have about 30,000 hours in the space as a barber. So that comes with it, on average, 5,000 haircuts a year. So you tally up, 15 years. You're getting into like 50,000 different experiences, and you're dealing with the public. And so each experience, you're cutting above someone's crown chakra, right? You're communicating and exchanging thoughts. So the relationship is very, very unique. A lot of people put their barber in the same category as their doctor and their accountant, like those people in their life that are irreplaceable. So, I would hope that each man could be that lucky to have that type of, person where they can get groomed and also have that space, that therapeutic space where you can just sit, right, quietly, whether you talk or you just want to sit. That 30 minutes is yours. So do you meditate 30 minutes a day? If you did, that would be almost the equivalent. So when people come into the barbershop, if they can't isolate their time, that's their meditation time. And some people use it to converse, others use it to be introspective. Some men want to sleep. So not every person in the chair is telling you all their innermost secrets, but the space is a therapeutic space, right? Even when I get my hair done, sometimes I'm talking, sometimes I'm sleeping. I allow myself the same grace. And I think what's cool about that is, for me, having these guys for me to talk to has been therapeutic. So, guys will come in, and maybe I have 10 guys out of 60 who just had a baby this year. Guess what? I had a baby this year. That's a special connection that year. So maybe, 10 guys out of 6 had a divorce that year. You know what? I had a divorce a few years back. 10 guys out of have traveled to the same 10 places. So there's always different things to connect you with guys. And, it is really a really cool job. I will say I'm lucky to have found it when I was 16, and I've made, millions of dollars doing this work and impacting a lot of people, helping them look their best, feel their best, tell them it's okay to self-care. Your hair is one part of it. The whole thing should be a ritual. What are you doing each month? You got a massage therapist? No? All right, here's a call. Here's somebody I'll send you to. You got someone you go into for astrology readings. You got to get your mental health and your spiritual health cleared out. Here's somebody you can go to. All right, you got a personal trainer? All right, here's somebody in my network. Okay. You need somebody to help you out with ear waxing? No, okay, here's somebody. So it's a whole network of grooming and self-care and mental care that I built here, and just helping myself. Like, I've gone to all these. You need someone to help you out with a little acupuncture? You got some stiffness there? Sure. You need chiropractor? I got a guy. I went to him years ago. It's all about taking care, all right, of your most prized possession, your body.
Yes.
When we're back in the spirit realm, there's no evidence that we can feel pain or learn through painful lessons and experiences. This is our time to learn these things, right? To feel this, whatever it is, these frequencies and this energy. So I'm fully involved in the experience of life. I'm not, they say everything you want is on the other side of fear. So,
Yes.
that's what I had to come to grips with when I was leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they paint a picture of gloom and doom, of fear. When you leave, you're going to be in the gutter with a needle in your arm in 6 months. That's what I've been hearing since I was 6. And I was like, I was petrified to leave in my 20s. I spent my
Yeah.
entire 20s working for the Watchtower. Listen, it's a $1 billion nonprofit. I have skills that I'm still using till today. So I'm not complaining. But they did have me in mental bondage, right? And
Yeah.
the mental overhaul that I had to do was extraordinary. And I just want to shorten that gap for a lot of people and give them
Yes.
opportunities who are trapped right now. I got friends right now that I think about when I think about this work that I'm doing. Guys that I went to college with, I was a freshman at Bethel with, are still there in their 30s. And it's like, yo, if you ever leave, the longer you take, the harder it's going to be.
It
Somebody
becomes
has to,
more difficult.
yeah.
So my last question for you is this: the pandemic we are currently experiencing. There's something very spiritual happening in the world right now.
Mhm.
I grew up in Africa in the 80s with the AIDS pandemic. And when I moved to New Zealand 21 years ago, I would share the stories of losing family members to AIDS. My grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins died of HIV related diseases,
Sheesh.
including my youngest brother. Now, it sounded like a fiction story when I would share it. I told a story of going to a funeral the week before I came to New Zealand. One of my cousins died. I went back to the same graveyard when another cousin died just before I left with 2 bunches of flowers. And my intention was to go to the previous grave and leave flowers on that grave. And I had to walk 2 kilometers to get to the previous grave of somebody we buried 2 weeks before.
Mm,
Now, when you tell these kind of stories in the Western world, it sounds like fiction.
mm,
I feel this virus has come to unite humanity in a very strange way. It has come to give us a shared experience.
mhm,
It has come to teach us empathy.
mhm,
I don't think there's anyone who will come out of this experience without knowing somebody who's died of COVID, who's had COVID, who's suffering from the side effects of it. I also feel that it is a reminder to all of us that we are one, that the human race is one. In Africa, we have a philosophy called Ubuntu. You might have come across it in your travels. Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu says a person is only a person through other people. It's
mhm,
the condition of being human.
mhm,
My grandmother would say that the human race is like the human body.
mhm,
We are cells of the same organism.
mhm,
So if you cut your fingers and you start to bleed, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it.
mhm,
In a week's time, you can't even see the scar. And
mm,
that's how we should be reacting and responding to each other in the world.
mm.
What is your take on what the coronavirus has come to teach?
It's funny. As a witness, we're taught to stay out of the world, because this is what the world deserves, right? Is lying in the power of the wicked one. That's what I was conditioned to believe. Now, I believe that we're all stewards in this lifetime. We're stewards of our planet and of each other, right? And so, when it comes to the world and like the world's economy, like before the pandemic, I was just working 80 hours a week trying to build, grow, and scale to just get a piece of the pie and grow, 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 grow. I had time to really look and analyze the globe. So, let's say right now there's roughly 390 trillion dollars in the world's economy. Half of that is owned by like 45 people, right? And then the other portion of that's remaining, you know, 20% own 80% of that. So, when it comes to the world's resources, it's gobbled up in the hands of a few. And it's not like I'm not in the top 10%. So there's a lot that we have in America. I've been to 40 countries. My family's Nigerian, been all over the world. I've seen shanty towns in South Africa. I've seen favelas in Brazil. I'm no stranger to poverty in America. There's enough money right now for everyone over the age of 18 to have $70,000. There's enough for everyone to have more, but there's just something in, I don't know if it's Pareto's rule or this idea that to them who have more will be given. But regardless of that, Jesus said that you will always have the poor with you, because really it's a mentality. And those who are Andrew Carnegie said millionaires have to be stewards of the poor, because that's just the balance. So yes, those who have more, who have abundance, looking at the scene, there should be a shift, and I think there has been a shift, right? I think when the new year came, it was 2021 here, but in Ethiopia it was like 2012. The reason why I brought that up is because there are calendars that talk about a different shift in the zodiac, where we're in an age of the Aquarian nature, the humanitarian spirit, and there's a shift in this more egalitarian spirit in humanity. And we kind of see that the pandemic has leveled the playing field, and it has given the world more of a pause and a reason to reorganize itself, right? You see it with the advent of crypto, right? Billions of people in the world are deciding that they don't want the central banks to control everything, that they want the internet and this new, blockchain, Ethereum platform. And I'm learning about, this is what the world is doing. I'm just making myself a pioneer and an early adapter, but I'm also, acutely aware of how the nations and the banks govern themselves, and how they control the resources and the trading and the markets. And that's all, built off 3 centuries of Dutch and British common law during the colonial days, and the contracts go. So like, as humans, we need contracts, we need agreements, we need structures. We don't want to be killing ourselves for things to eat, but there needs to be more balance. There needs to be more balance, and the world needs to help balance it out, or else it has a strange way of doing things for us with these pandemics, right? So, I do think that this has been a very special time. I think this, in my opinion, was the last days and the Great Tribulation, and that we are in something new. If you want to look at, the Bible literally, but that you have to have eyes to see that. So let the reader use discernment. So I definitely am in the same accord with you that this is a new age, a new spirit, and that this is just the beginning. Hopefully, we see the world make a shift to get everyone at least out of that poverty level. What we see in Haiti, it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable.
Thank you so much, man. I could talk to you all day.
We can go for hours.
It's really enlightening to meet someone who thinks and sees the world through the lens that I view the world as well. There is abundance in this universe. There's enough to go around. And the pause we've been given is to realize that, to reimagine another future, not for ourselves, but for our children, and to leave those legacies and break the generational ties that have held people back and kept people in poverty for so long. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Charlie. It has been an absolute pleasure meeting with you, connecting with you today. Are you available online? How can people get hold of you? I know a lot of people are suffering. Do you have anything that you help people with online because of all of the restrictions that are in the world right now?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Artisan3000, one word. Shout out to my favorite rapper. And artisanbarber.com is where you can reach me and look at my main business. And then from there, I have links to the Grooming Alchemist, which is our initiative to help young men of color and cult survivors right here in New York City. I'm available. I'm really into this activism work. I want to be a lot more visible in the coming months, talking about the subject of mental health. First, starting with working with Harry's, and then doing more collaborations and getting the message out that it's okay for men to talk about this, and it's okay for them to care for themselves. And really, they should have a routine in place to keep themselves together. young men, old men, men of color. And yeah, I'll be shaking my tin cup looking for support.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlie. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today from all over the world. The Her Story movement is a platform where you can come and share your story. Focus on your business and entrepreneurial journey and empower another entrepreneur to do the same. Your health and wellness, family and relationships, spirituality, social justice. And if you're creative, you can come and sing, you can dance, you can paint a picture. Please join the movement. We are interviewing men because we realize that until we start bringing men into the rooms where we are discussing women's issues, nothing much will change for the condition of women worldwide. So, Charlie, you are one of the few men who has stepped onto our platform. I thank you for your presence. I thank you for your knowledge. And you have shone a light on issues that a lot of women need to be aware of with their husbands, with their partners. A lot of men suffer in silence and don't know how to talk about the things that they're going through. And I'm really glad that there's people like you who can facilitate and help bridge that gap. So come back again tomorrow, everybody. I'll be interviewing yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, here's a small commercial to encourage you to step onto our platform, use your voices. Somebody is waiting to hear your story. You could be the light at the end of somebody else's tunnel. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now, everybody.
Bye.